Welcome back to the DRH show. I'm thrilled to welcome a guest whose work in personal growth, intuitive coaching, and inner well-being is truly inspiring. As an intuitive coach, he helps conscious professionals heal and uncover their true potential. Through his platform, the Buddha Spot, he supports individuals in their ongoing personal evolution, encouraging them to connect with their deeper selves and unlock their true potential. His journey from profound experiences in Peru to learning from monks, yogis, shamans, and coaches has shaped his philosophy of living a balanced life that benefits both individuals and those around them. Mark Dallimore, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you, Dennis. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me
So,
on.
Mark, yeah, sure. I was just going to ask you because based on your website, you've experienced a major personal shift that led from a successful career in advertising to purpose-driven coaching. So, can you share what triggered that transformation and how it changed your path?
Yes. Well, as I shared before we started, that's a long story in itself. So I'll give you the bullet points. As always, when people go into this area, coaching, healing, helping others in some way, it usually involves trauma at some point because it's very difficult to help others unless we can resonate with what they've been through. And that was certainly the case for me. Living as you said, a fairly sort of normal life up until the age of about 33. In a relatively successful career in advertising, I was financially stable. I was in a good relationship, but I wasn't really pushing myself to grow, and I certainly wasn't exploring the deeper levels of myself. But that all changed after a trip to Peru in back into 2012. And for anyone who knows about these interesting dates, and that was the time when things really began to shift on the planet, and that was certainly the case for me. I had a profound experience out there exploring the Amazon, the Inca Trail, the Nazca Desert. It was an incredible journey, and it really opened me up in a spiritual way. And it was only on me coming back to my job in the middle of the city of London one day, looking out of my window in my corporate office at the city around me, I just realized, and it hit me like a lightning bolt, really, how disconnected I was in my life, how lost I was in terms of my purpose, in terms of my connection to my true self and the planet and nature as a whole. And it created a real split within me. At that time, I didn't know what it was. I'd never heard of anything like it. In psychology, I think it's known as disassociation, which is part of my personality pattern. I was to later find out. In shamanism, they call it soul loss, as I was later to find out. But anyway, the results of that were that I went from having a relatively stable and balanced mind from one day, and the next day I was experiencing, very serious mental health problems, a lot of depression, a lot of dark, negative self-talk, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame about my past. It essentially turned my world upside down, my inner world anyway. This, is often known as the dark night of the soul, what a lot of people go through on the path of awakening. But it was essentially over the 10 years after that, I went for a deep period of shedding old aspects of myself, my old personality patterns. And what was revealed was a new version of myself, more spiritually aligned with my purpose, healed, and then eventually, as what a lot of people do, had the calling to serve and help others in some way through the gifts that I've learned through that very, very dark period of my life. And as you say, that's what I now help people with now, their own well-being, their own healing, and defining their own purpose. Purpose is an essential aspect of well-being for me, and it goes a lot deeper than most people think. But that's a kind of overview of my story, if you like, and how I got to here today.
Mm-hmm. And of course, now that you've found your purpose, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that at the heart of your work is Buddha Spot. And so it's kind of an interesting journey, really. But I was kind of also intrigued by the name Buddha Spot. So what inspired the name, and how does it reflect your approach to coaching and inner well-being?
Yes, very good question. It's someone else asked me this recently as to why I called it the Buddha Spot, because I experienced many different modalities on my own journey of healing and awakening. First of all, I explored the Western routes, went to see doctors and psychologists and counselors. And what I found is that they didn't really understand what I was going through. And they were kind of pushing me towards medication. No one's fault. It's just that there's not a great deal of understanding when it comes to energetics and spirituality and trauma for me on that path. And so they were pushing me towards medication. I tried it for 6 months, but it left me feeling very numb and disconnected. And I just knew that wasn't the path for me. And so I decided, well, what it took, however long it took me, I was going to heal myself. And that sent me on a journey first towards the Eastern practices and Buddhism in particular. I stayed for extended periods of time in Buddhist monasteries in the UK, just learning the basics of meditation. There are also some very good centers on the outskirts of London as well. And I learned from the senior monks there over a period of time, attending Vipassana retreats. And it was there that I started to step into the first step of awakening, I would say, which is to be able to observe myself, my internal experience, my thoughts, my emotions. You know, this is very common for people as they step into self-development and personal growth. But for me, that was a huge step, because all of a sudden, these very, very negative thoughts I was having about myself and my past, I realized that it wasn't me, that I could just listen to the thoughts, and that I could decide which thoughts that I was going to believe and which thoughts I wasn't. And, you know, this is a very, very important step. And that's why eventually I went on to call my own coaching business the Buddha Spot, because the teachings of the Buddha had such a profound and important effect on my own healing and development. But, you know, what I did find on that path, although it was tremendously beneficial in terms of my self-awareness, I didn't find a great deal of healing on that path. You know, I was still dealing with the same mental health challenges. It's just that I was able to witness them more. So then it took me on a path into, as you touched on earlier, shamanism and plant medicine, more the Western route, if you like, the practices that come out of the shamanic traditions of the Amazon. And so I went on a ayahuasca retreat, 10-day ayahuasca retreat in Peru, working with indigenous shamans. I also worked with shamans in the UK and in Costa Rica as well. And this is the path where I really did start to learn about trauma and its effects and how I could ultimately heal it. As I talked to earlier, I heard about the path, the term soul loss, which I'd never heard of before in the West. But for a shaman in that tradition, it's very, very common for someone to experience soul loss and the mental health effects of damaging mental health effects of soul loss. So I went for a series of ceremonies, soul retrievals, where my fractured parts were all able to reintegrate back into the whole. And, you know, it didn't happen overnight. It was a long period of time, slowly working, healing my fractured parts, until around about 2019, I started to feel that I was coming more towards a balanced state again. I was feeling more calm and balanced inside, more energized, more positive. And around that time, I found a method of healing, which I call energetic mirroring, from some very powerful coaches that I met. And it seemed to encompass everything that I'd learned over the last sort of 10 years into very simple practice. It takes the best parts of meditation and Buddhism, combines it with what I consider to be the best aspects of shamanism and plant medicine, and combines them into one daily practice that we can all integrate into our busy lives. Now, that path of plant medicine and shamanism, the reason why I don't recommend it to people, even though it's very, very powerful, is that it really can, depending on your particular traumas you've experienced, exacerbate the problems rather than improve them in the short term, which is why we have to be really careful that we go with our own internal calling if we're going to work with the plants like ayahuasca or San Pedro or whatever it might be, psilocybin. But the method that I found, energetic mirroring, is something that anybody can integrate into their busy daily lives. And it means that we don't have to, because of modern technology, we don't have to leave the comfort of our own home. We don't have to go to the Peruvian Amazon, for example, or an ashram or a monastery in India. We can experience healing from the comfort of our own homes. And as I say, anybody can integrate it into their daily lives because it's very short and easy to implement.
Now, Marky, you've mentioned about calling, inner calling. So what's the difference between inner purpose and outer purpose? And you kind of alluded that it's really important that we make a distinction between these two.
Yes, yeah, it really is. What I've talked about so far is what I would call inner purpose. And we all have a shared inner purpose. You know, when people think about purpose, what people tend to think about is the actions that they're taking in the world towards a certain goal. For some people, I hear a lot of people say is to serve others in some way. Maybe that's around creating a business. Maybe that's around their career. Maybe it's about hitting a certain monetary target, you know, and they tie their purpose to a certain external goal. What's really important to realize that as a human being, our purpose goes far, far deeper than that. And when I talk about inner and outer purpose, the distinction for me is inner purpose is our state of being. Outer purpose is our doing, the actions we take in the world. Now, the reason why that's important is because we all have a shared inner purpose. We're all put here for one reason, ultimately, and that is self-realization. That term self-realization can be determined as realizing who we are beyond the conditioned mind. So we all have thoughts, we all have emotions, we all have energy that's constantly in motion, constantly changing. But what we can start to do through practices like meditation is become aware of the witness. You know, there is that aspect of ourselves that is able to step back and witness our experience and not get caught up in it, not believe all the thoughts, not get lost in emotions and feelings. And this is our shared inner purpose. It's your purpose, Dennis. It's my purpose. It's everyone listening to this and watching this. It's their purpose as well. Self-realization. That's why we keep coming back into human form. That's why we keep reincarnating, and that's why we experience the challenges that we do to help us start to awaken to who we really are. And it does usually take something pretty profound for people to start on that journey. Otherwise, we tend to go through our lives in autopilot, really. So this is the work of inner purpose, the work of healing, the work of witnessing, the work of sitting with our internal experience. Now, why it's important to talk about inner purpose first is because a lot of people go straight to outer purpose, helping others in some way with their actions. But if we haven't first connected with our inner purpose, what tends to happen is people burn out. They get overwhelmed, and they're not coming from a place of wholeness and alignment within, and so they can actually end up doing more harm than good on their journey of outer purpose. So it's really important first to find that inner alignment, to work on our own healing and self-realization, so that we know who we are, we know the impact we want to have on the world, and we have the resource to be able to carry it out. So when I talk about outer purpose, then it was a natural step for me. As I said, in about 2019, I felt like, okay, I'm feeling balanced, I'm feeling whole within. Now I want to help others. And so it's really important to do that inner purpose work first. Outer purpose then will be dependent on our own unique skills, our own unique gifts that we've developed on our journey. And that will change as we go through our lives. Also our passions as well. When I think about my life, initially my passion was around art and design, then it was around traveling, then it was around spirituality, then it was around entrepreneurship. It's always changing, and it will do for you. It will do for everybody watching. So it'll be unique to everybody. But it's essentially, when I talk about outer purpose, it's the actions we take in the world, and it's our unique way of serving others. And, that's something that we can always work on. That'll always be changing. It'll always be evolving. And it's something that will unfold as we go through our lives. But in my experience, that's something that we naturally start to inquire with as we bring ourselves to a place of healing and wholeness within.
Absolutely. You've touched on a very important point about, trying to chase a metric or a goal related to your career. So as a result, it really, a lot of people are struggling with burnout. So, and you mentioned that a lot of things can help with, addressing your burnout, when it comes to goals and when it comes to passion. But can you give us some practical, concrete steps that professionals can take to shift from stress and overwhelm to a state of flow?
Yes. Yeah, very good question. It's the challenge we have in our society is that nobody really is talking about this stuff. And for me, it's the most important aspect to life, really. And it's the reason why I believe we have such a mental health crisis, certainly in the West, is that we go through our schooling system and education system And it's basically designed to funnel us into a particular career, a way of earning money, essentially. But it's not necessarily designed to create happy and healthy human beings. And I think that's actually changing now. But this is what I found in my own career, is that I was working. So number one, I was making decisions from my conditioned mind. And what the conditioned mind is interested in is survival and safety. It's not particularly interested in passion and fulfillment and well-being. It would much rather chase status, for example. Oh, I want to be the CEO of that company. Oh, I want to earn 10 grand a month, or, these kind of external status symbols, rather than, what is going to make me happy? What is going to make me fulfilled? And so there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with chasing external targets like that and wanting to improve and better ourselves. But, we also have to have a balance between, as I said earlier, the doing and the being, the masculine and the feminine energies. If we don't have that balance, then we're going to fall out of alignment. And that's what leads to, as you said, stress and burnout and overwhelm and breakdown. And so many people I've met in my career have ended up taking extended time off work or ending up on medication, just to keep going. And, because there's not enough people are talking about, well-being practices. What people often do is they will numb themselves to what's happening, or they will distract themselves from what's happening within. So this might be, as I said, medication. It might be alcohol. It might be social media. It might be TV. But there's a million different distractions available to us because we're not able to sit with our internal experience. So the way that I help people, particularly senior professionals and entrepreneurs, is to bring them back into the feminine energy. So being able to sit with ourselves, to witness our internal experience and to be with it. Now, that's extremely difficult for somebody who's just starting out, because if you ever tried meditation, you'll know this for yourself. What happens is the mind will continually take us out into the past, what happened yesterday, or the future, what we're doing later today. And there's very little stillness. And for healing to take place, we need to bring mind and body to rest. That is the real key when it comes to healing. When we're in our heads, our system tightens up and healing energy can't process. So we need a way to bring mind and body to rest. Now, people understand about the idea of bringing body to rest. For example, just sitting or lying down. But healing doesn't happen if we're sitting on the sofa watching Netflix, for example. We need to bring mind and body to rest. Now, the key to bringing mind to rest is to have somebody sat with us to hold a container for us where we feel safe, supported, and connected. For me, it's almost impossible to heal on our own. We need to have trusted support with us. And that's why when I created all my programs, healing is an essential part of that. And what I mean by that is that the amazing thing about the time we live in is we have this technology, like we're speaking through now, where I can connect with you in real time anywhere in the world. I have clients in Australia, I have clients in America, and energy works beyond space and time. So, for example, I can sit with you and you are picking up on my vibration, my emotions, my energy. If I was to suddenly start shouting and screaming on this podcast, your body would have a visceral response. In the same way as if I dropped into my system now, and I connected with my heart, and I slowed down my talking, and I started projecting ground within my own system, your system has a response. It templates that. And that's really key, because when we're feeling dysregulated and overwhelmed in our lives, through our relationships, through our work, or whatever it might be, it's almost impossible for us to regulate ourselves because we're basically sitting within our own trauma and conditioning. We need to have somebody with us that we can template who is in a grounded state. That's essential, because if we don't have that, and this is the practice what I call energetic hygiene. So we all know about physical hygiene, having a shower each day, brushing our teeth, and we naturally do that once or twice a day. Nobody is talking about energetic hygiene. What we ideally want to be doing is clearing out our energetic system on a daily basis. So this is what I set up with my clients in my community. We'll sit with each other once a day or twice a day, whatever suits that person, and we'll all drop into meditation, and we'll all feel into the support that's available to us as a group, And what happens naturally, without us having to do anything, we don't do healing. Healing happens naturally within our body. Our system will naturally start to template others and bring itself back into a place of regulation and process out any dysregulated energy. It's amazing how it happens, but it just happens spontaneously as a result of us bringing mind and body to rest.
That makes really absolute sense, Marcus. Like your perfect analogy that we look after our physical hygiene, having shower and cleaning our teeth, but we don't seem to look we don't seem to look after our internal our internal being. So I was just wondering, how does repressed emotion, past experiences, how do they become a sort of catalyst for personal transformation and growth, or do they become kind of barrier?
Yeah, exactly that. Well, I can talk a little bit about what trauma is, and this is what I've learned on my journey over the last about 13 years about how trauma takes place. When people talk about trauma, they often think about what I call capital T trauma, big trauma. This might be abuse that happens in childhood. It might be an accident that you're involved in. It might be if somebody is involved in conflict in a war zone, for example. All examples of major trauma. And what a lot of people think is when they hear about healing, is they go, well, I haven't experienced anything like that. I'm fine. I'm okay. I don't need to heal. But what's critical to realize is that we all require healing as a result of living in this society at this time. We all experience conditioning from our society. We all experience trauma in our childhood. And that's no one's fault. It's just that our parents or caregivers, they weren't taught how to heal themselves or maintain their own energetic alignment. And so they passed on all kinds of trauma down to us through their lineage. And how this manifests is, not just in terms of our mental health and well-being, which is the most important aspect, but also if you try and change in the area of your life. Say, for example, you're not happy in your career, in your work, and you think, well, I'm going to change jobs. If we haven't addressed the underlying trauma that caused this dissatisfaction in the first place within, then we'll just manifest the same experience over and over again. Same as in relationships. A lot of people come to me and they say to me, I'm just done with the relationships, because I just keep meeting the same person over and over again, and the same thing keeps happening. That this person, just cheats on me, for example, or I don't feel a connection with the person. I end up leaving, or whatever it is. As I said, that can manifest in all manner of ways. It can manifest in our health. Experience the same health problems over and over again. We experience the same financial hardships, the same restrictions around money. No matter what we do, we never seem to be able to break through of the ceiling that the container we're in financially. All of this, if we want to transform any aspect of our lives, it comes down to one thing, and that is healing. Because this is really important. If we get this, it gives us a tremendous amount of power. External reality is a reflection of our internal energetic system. In other words, what we see around us is basically like a mirror reflecting back to us our internal traumas. This external reality will keep giving us the same projection until we heal the trauma within our energetic system. When I say energetic system, we've got a line of chakras or energy centers down the middle of our body, and they're essentially powering the mind. They're responsible for sending energy around the body. One is responsible for the heart, the solar plexus, the sacral, for example. And it's within these chakra systems, so particularly from the area of the throat down to the stomach, these are where the majority of our traumas are stored. How they manifest is, for example, if you were to suddenly feel into that area, just take a moment, and you might notice an uncomfortable sensation somewhere down the middle of the body there. Maybe it feels like a bit of tightening in the stomach. Maybe it feels like a restriction in the chest or around the heart. This is the core and the foundation of trauma. And in order to heal these traumas and to make breakthroughs in our lives, what's required is for us to sit with these really uncomfortable sensations in the body. And we don't have to do anything. We don't have to make anything happen. If we just sit with them, holding them with compassion and patience, the energy will start to process out of the body. You may feel it go down your legs. You may feel it start to move up to your top of your head or down the arms. The body knows how to heal itself. We don't do healing. The body will naturally start to heal itself and bring itself back into balance when it feels safe and supported by another. Most of our traumas are created when we feel disconnected from others in some way or ourselves. So the way to heal is when we feel into these really uncomfortable sensations, these traumas, these blockages in our energetic system, we have somebody with us, we have connection when we feel through them. And that enables us to stay with them long enough for the body to then process them out of the body. You can think of this as, imagine a stream of water. That's essentially how we come into life, our energetic system. But these traumas, and they're caused by when we don't feel into uncomfortable sensations, we don't face them, that creates a blockage with our energetic system. And that, in that analogy, is like boulders in a stream. That it dysregulates and it disrupts the flow of energy that goes down our energetic system. And, that's what leads then to lowering our vibration. Depression, anxiety, all these mental health problems are caused by energetic blockages within our system. By feeling through them with support, the body will start to slowly untangle itself to process these blockages. That raises our energetic vibration. We start to experience more safety, more well-being, a feeling of connection. And that then reflects in our external reality. We start attracting different people to us, different work situations. Our finances can improve just by healing ourselves within and raising our energetic vibration.
So thank you for explaining that profoundly to us, Mark. But what advice would you give to professionals who feel stuck but want to transition to a more fulfilling career, just like what you've done? And also for entrepreneurs, how can they create a business that is both financially rewarding and aligned with their deeper purpose? Because you talk about this purpose earlier.
Yeah, really good question. It's purpose, as I said, it goes much deeper than people realize. And most people think about purpose as being what they do, as I said earlier, their career or their business, for example. But what happens often is that, I touched on this earlier, but we make it a series of decisions in life from our conditioned mind. The conditioned mind, our thoughts are only focused on one thing, survival and safety. And so it will guide us towards experiences that reflect that. So what most people end up with and incidentally, something like 77% of the world's population feel disconnected by the work they do. 66% are not thriving in terms of their well-being. This is a study that was done last year, millions of people around the world. So this is a major problem. There's a whole, the majority of humanity at the moment is wasting their potential. They're in jobs that don't fulfill them. And this is where I was, obviously, up until the age of, into my late 30s, really. As a starting point, instead of going and, as I said earlier, changing careers or building a business, if we haven't done the inner healing work, we will manifest the same situation over and over again. The same trauma will just repeat itself. We could go from one career where we feel unfulfilled, completely change it, and the same situation will just manifest itself in a different situation. The same, when I first started to create a business, I created an affiliate business, hadn't done any of the healing work around my own trauma around purpose and work. And I just created a business that created the same situation that I was in my work, my working life. I still felt unfulfilled. I still had the same financial ceiling. I still had the same, people that I was attracting that were pretty low vibration. So this is why it's essential before going and creating a business or changing careers. If you are feeling unfulfilled, like most people do in their work, begin within. Start. The most important investment we can ever make is in ourselves and our own healing. It will transform all aspects of our lives, but particularly, if we're feeling unfulfilled and misaligned with our purpose, like most people do, start within. Start focusing on your own healing. Start to reconnect with your inner purpose, the work of being, reconnecting with who you really are, witnessing your experience, processing the energetic traumas. And when you start to reconnect with yourself, it will raise your vibration. You'll have the energy, you'll have the resource, you'll have the alignment. And more importantly, you'll feel on purpose. If purpose is not something that someone else can give us and write on a piece of paper and put on your wall somewhere. Purpose is a feeling. And when we connect with our true self, we have that feeling of purpose. And then when we go and change careers, then when we go and build a business, we can create it from a place of true alignment. that will be unique to our own personal gifts and passions, and that will connect with others in a very real way. Until we do that, I can always tell the people that are online who've done this work of purpose and who haven't, their message is very gray, and it doesn't really connect, and they don't share their story, and they don't share their difficulties. This is really important if we're going to build a business that really connects and resonates and is ultimately successful. Connecting with that inner purpose, then doing the work around, how can I really serve others with my unique gifts and my passions, and then go and build a career or a business from that. Really important to that inner foundational work first before we go out into the outer world and start building something new.
Absolutely. So that basically, I think one of the key takeaways is that people need to realize that a career or a business is not just a means to pay your bills. It's more than that. You have to look for something that makes you more encouraged, more passionate about.
Yes.
Lovely talking to you, Mark. But before we wrap up, I just want to end on a lighter note with some quick fire questions.
Sure.
So we could get to know you a bit better. So the
Sure.
first quick fire question is, what were you afraid of as a child?
Ooh, as a child, I was afraid of pretty much everything, I think. I was a pretty terrified child. Certainly by the time I got to my teenage years, my biggest fear was public speaking. Doing something like this when I was younger would have absolutely terrified me. And it's only as a result of healing myself that I've been able to speak on stage or speak on podcasts. It would have absolutely terrified me. But again, it's the same thing. Can you sit with the terrified parts within yourself and provide them with compassion and patience until they reintegrate into the whole? Ultimately, there's no limit to our potential if we're able to do that, if we're able to be with our present moment without experience. But yeah, that's always been my biggest fear, I think.
Absolutely. And what is your favorite word in another language?
Favorite word in another language? Well, I'm actually from Wales myself, from South Wales. And although the Welsh language is dying out a bit, to be honest, there's a couple of words I like. There's the word cwtch, which means it's somewhere safe and comfortable, or it means a hug. I think, I love that word. We use it quite a bit in my family. Or cariad, which means love or darling. So I don't know many Welsh words, but they're probably my favorite.
And if you hadn't been a coach, what would you have pursued in your life? Would you have, stuck with your business career, or would you have done something different?
Well, it's interesting. For me, work up until about 10 years ago was like you said, it was a means to an end, a way to earn money. And I thought, well, it's okay. I earn decent money. I'm creative. I'm a designer, but I always felt like I want to make more of a difference in my life. I want to help others, and I want to work in a way that maximizes my potential. So now that I found this work as a coach, I can't imagine myself doing anything else really. If I couldn't work, then I'd probably travel and just have experiences that help me to evolve and heal in some way. But if I can help others on the way to healing myself, that for me is a life well lived.
And finally, the floor is all yours. What should people take away from today's conversation?
If I had to sum it up, just quickly, I'll summarize it. I read a book 2019 called The 5 Biggest Regrets of the Dying. And you might well know this one, Dennis, but it really had a big impact on me when I read the number one biggest regret of people that come to the end of their lives. And it was written by a palliative health nurse called Bronnie Ware, who spent many, many years with people at the end of their lives. And she said the number one regret was I didn't live a life true to myself. I lived the life that others expected of me. Now, whenever I feel like there's a bit of a lack of motivation or direction or confusion with my own purpose and what I'm building, I just think back to that, because when I heard that for the first time, I made it my commitment that I don't want to end my life with that as my biggest regret. Think how many millions or potentially billions of people have got to the end of life and thought, I didn't live this. I didn't make the most of it. I didn't live a life true to myself. I lived a life that society expected, my parents expected, my spouse expected, but I didn't connect with who I really am. I didn't live from my own particular values or passions or gifts. And just some advice, to anyone listening, just remember that if you're unsure about taking action of any kind now in terms of your own healing or your own purpose, just realize that majority of the human race get to the end of life with that regret. I didn't live it true to myself. But now, if you're listening to this right now, you've got a chance to make a difference so that you don't get to the end of life with that regret. And I'm a big believer that the only thing we take beyond this life into the next is the evolution of our own consciousness. So if we're going to make a big difference in this life, it has to be now. Don't put it off because tomorrow never comes, as they say. Don't end life with any regrets. Face your fears, step into your purpose, feel into your traumas, and let's just make the absolute most of this amazing opportunity that we call life to make a difference.
That's a fantastic note to end on, Mark. That's it for us. Your work on intuitive coaching, personal transformation, and inner well-being has been truly inspiring. Mark Dallimore, it's been a pleasure having you on the DRH show, and I look forward to seeing how your work continues to create meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Real pleasure.